You're listening into Rhema Afternoons with Tom and Di, and catching up once again with Carl Tinnion from Heavenly Nosh. We talk all things food and faith, and this time round, Christmas. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Oh,
yeah. Happy Christmas or happy Advent.
Well, yeah, and look, food is a big part of this season, a lot of preparations being made. But look, where you're taking it today is not, well, it is part of the Advent story, isn't it? But it's maybe not one of the traditional stories that, we talk about in the lead up to Christmas.
Yeah, I thought it'd be nice to talk about the journey of the Magi, the wise men, the three kings, so whatever sort of title you want to give it. But it's not normal Advent, because normally we would celebrate that on the 6th of January as Epiphany. So it's a little bit of a twist.
Okay, so let's hear this with a twist then, because we're focusing in on the Magi, their journey to see Jesus, and it actually took a long time. When we read it, we can often just sort of skip over or glaze over just how long this journey would have taken.
Yeah, very long journey. Let me come back to that. I want to just give you some back story, I guess, or some context to who they were, because there's lots of different ideas. They weren't kings. They were wise, I guess, but they were the Magi were kind of all kinds of things, from philosophers to stargazers to, I guess, the wise men of that era. And if you go right back to Daniel, the book of Daniel, Daniel ended up becoming the head of the Magi. So it goes back right that far. So he would have always been in their, I guess, their own historical story and their own records, which is fascinating. But they were Parthian kingmakers in the courts of Persia. So they weren't kings, they made kings. They were the ones that kind of anointed or enabled kingship. It's in the Babylon region. And so, this whole thing was, they'd been going through their own archives, and who knows whether some of it was some of the things that Daniel had written himself. But they realized that the stars have aligned and that something new is happening in the world. And it was a combination of two strange things. One was the birth of a king, but also they recognized that this was no ordinary king. It was kind of cosmic and much kind of universal, and it was just amazing to them. So they wanted to go and find who this king was, because they realized it was an inbreaking in history. And so they follow this star, and it's the journey actually from where they were in Babylon, I guess today's Iraq or Iran, in that kind of area, was 1,200 kilometers. So it took 1 to 3 months on a camel train, a really long time. And there wasn't, there's no record that there was 3 wise men. There was probably a whole entourage of these really wanting to find the new. So that's kind of backstory. And I link it to Advent because Advent is the Latin word for coming, or an arrival. And in our Christian context, the arrival of Jesus. And in Advent, we are anticipating the new. We're preparing for Jesus entering the world and bringing transformation. So, I often think about these Magi every night, sitting around the fire with their camels, all lying around them in the desert. Most of it was a desert journey. Late at night, sitting around the fire, cooking food and talking about what is it that we're going to. They didn't know. There was uncertainty, but also hope and excitement about this new thing. All the while with this star, really bright star, shining upon them while they converse and get excited about what might be happening in the universe. Pretty cool.
I guess when you think about coming from so far away, like it's a little bit like us too, learning and growing in our knowledge of who Jesus and who our Heavenly Father is. Who is this King? So it's it's interesting to reflect on this journey. Now, I can imagine. What are you thinking in terms of food in the desert? Barbecue.
Yeah, I guess we did a previous one on kebabs, where I talked about the fact nomads used their short swords, for just skewering meat. And I think this is probably the same kind of thing. I mean, historically, there's probably an earlier route. Who knows? Maybe the Magi were the first kebab creators, but they would have used whatever meat they could get in different towns that they passed through. And I was looking, I did some research into the kind of food that they would have been eating on those camel trains. And sometimes it was just dried stock or dried beans or whatever that they would have had, stews. But if they'd stopped at a previous town, there would be some meat, lamb or mutton, but also nuts and dates and figs. And so I thought, we'll do a kind of Magi kebab on a stick, and think about that story, if that sounds okay.
Okay. Well, let's hear it then. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I reckon some lamb, some leg of lamb would be fine. Cut it into kind of cubes, and we're going to keep it really simple. It's a Persian recipe, so it's not overly complicated. Persian food is quite refined and elegant, and a lot of Arabic sort of food influences come from via Persia. So I'm just thinking some dried cumin and salt, and probably just a squeeze of lemon. So if you just cube up your meat and sprinkle some cumin and some salt and pepper onto that meat, a little bit of olive oil, and then thread it onto a skewer of some sort and put fresh dates. You could either do, no, actually dried dates would be better, and either dried figs or fresh figs in between each layer of meat. So we've got meat, date, fig, meat, date, fig. And you can probably sprinkle a bit of cumin onto the nuts, the dates and the figs as well. And then barbecue that. You can do it on any kind of barbecue, whatever is your best. I've said this before, charcoal is always king, but it's up to you. And so barbecue it. And again, I think sitting around the barbecue together and talking about Advent and our expectations for the season would be really beautiful. To think about this story, what must it have been like? And then to personalize it. What are we hoping for? What are we looking forward to? And one little Persian twist, I think once you've cooked this meat, crush some pistachio nuts into a kind of a fine, not too fine, but nice finely kind of crushed, and sprinkle it over the meat. So you've got this pistachio garnish. I think it'd be absolutely amazing with some flatbread. But it's about remembrance. And if I was being truly English, I would read the poem by T.S. Eliot, The Journey of the Magi, which is a wonderful poem and really locates this story, but then personalizes it at the end. Just a bit of poetry to your dinner. Why not?
Why not? It
And
sounds
yeah.
delicious.
It does. And of course the story in Matthew chapter 2 as well. But it's interesting, just as you were talking there, Carl, what are we to find? But they made the journey. They came to seek out this king, and that's the opportunity, I guess, before us as well, as we reflect on this. Some food for
Yeah,
thought. Yeah.
it's a faith journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carl Tinnion, joining us today. And once again, taking a look at, food and faith, and this time round with that Advent perspective. Thanks again. Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.